crafty friends, my name is Jessica and welcome back to my channel. Today we have a card using Distress Oxide inks on some Kraft Cardstock, doing a little bit of a tri-blend and then adding some embossing folder and die cuts to it. So let's get started. To get started, I went ahead and grabbed some of my favorite Distress Oxide colors in green. We have Cracked Pistachio, Lucky Clover, and Pine Needles. Now, I did go ahead and ink these up before I got started, but I noticed that Cracked Pistachio had a little bit too much ink still on it. So I'm trying to make sure that I smooth it out to get it to absorb into the pad. And then, of course, my brush is going to go ahead and pick up most of that here to get it off of the ink pad. So I'm going to be sure that I'm going to tap off. But when I noticed as I was ink blending this, if you're new here, I do a color blend series using dye inks every Wednesday. And so I'm revisiting Distress Oxides. It's been a while since I've played with them. And what I'm finding is that they are soaking into this craft cardstock very quickly. That is not something that I'm used to since I do use smooth cardstock when I use my dye inks, and the ink tends to sit on top for quite some time. So I'm a little bit reacclimating myself with these inks, trying to refamiliarize how they work. And so I was tapping off in the beginning and then realizing that that was being very counterproductive as I was putting most of the ink off onto the paper towel. And so I was treating them like dye inks, but they were not acting like dye inks. So what I did instead is I'm going right from ink pad to paper and just trying to get as smooth of a blend as possible, making sure that I'm going off on my paper towel in between until I achieved this look. Now we have Cracked Pistachio, Lucky Clover, and Pine Needles. We're going to go ahead and do a quick cleanup here. I like to use Squeaky Clean on my waffle flower grip mat and also baby wipes. So for today, I did use a baby wipe just to ensure that I got most of that pigment up. Now, Distress Oxide inks are really fun because they're water reactive. So I went ahead and sprayed a little bit of water onto my waffle flower mat, and I'm using my fan brush here to create little ink splotches, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick them up with a towel. The water creates a bleaching effect wherever it touches that panel and lifts the color up when you put a towel on top of it. Now we're going to go ahead and use this very beautiful Kaleidoscope embossing folder. This is from Simon Says Stamp. And as you can see, we got a little bit of cracking, which I end up really loving. And I enhanced that a little bit later in the video. But this die cut or it embossed beautifully. And I'm really excited to how it looks. Now we're going to go ahead and glue the sentiment together. So I went ahead and cut the Hello die out of Simon Says Stamp black cardstock. And then the shadow layer I cut out of Vellum. And then we're going to go ahead and get these adhered together. I like to use the Barely Art glue because it is a very fine tip, or it comes with a fine tip. It does come with a thicker one, but I put the fine tip on this bottle. And we're going to go ahead and adhere two of them together. And then I'm going to use my handy dandy pressure block, also known as a stamp block, to ensure that those layers adhere appropriately. While the block is pushing those two together, we're going to go ahead and glue up the back side of the final hello so that I can go ahead and place that down here on top of the other one. I think this is probably one of my most favorite hello dies. I love the little bit of shadow that you can get with the shadow layer, and the script just really speaks to me, and I find myself gravitating towards this sentiment quite a bit. When I do send my cards, they tend to be hello or something more generic with just hi or hugs. So I do tend to use these kinds of sentiments more often than other ones, just because when I'm reaching for a card, it's usually just because I want to reach out very quickly and let them know I'm thinking about them with a quick hello versus any kind of holiday or anniversary. We're going to use our handy dandy stamp block again to just continue to increase the pressure on that die cut so that the layers adhere all appropriately. Now, here comes the best part of the video. For those who know, I am a fiddler, and so this is me just trying to figure out what our layout's going to be. How do I want it to look? How many flowers are we going to use? The amount of leaves, etc., etc. So while I have that kind of loosely built, we're going to go ahead and do the card base while I kind of stare at it, assess it, determine what I'm thinking and feeling. I did cut extra die cuts just to be sure, but what I ended up doing was going with the rule of three and decided to do a big flower with the two little. And I liked exactly where they were there. And so we're going to go ahead and move forward with building the card. So I'm going to use a little bit of tape runner to adhere this panel to the card base. And I decided that I wanted the darker color up at the top versus the lighter after putting that die cut on top of it. That's kind of what made me want to do that. Is I tell myself I have this like inner crafty feng shui, and so I just go until it feels pleasing to me. Now here's the part I talked about earlier. We're using a sand eraser to go ahead and increase that distressed look that happened when I embossed this panel originally. Because the panel was still a little bit wet with all the ink that we did put down, it didn't quite do exactly what I wanted, but I was still happy and knew that we were going to cover up a lot of it with these die cuts. But I wished I would have dried the panel with a heat gun just to get a little bit more of a cleaner look with the distress, if that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and use some glue to adhere this down. I am using the Kraft tacky glue. It is a thicker glue, and because the panel was still kind of wet, I thought this would be the best glue to try to ensure that these die cuts stay exactly where I want them. I'm really enjoying this line that Simon has out right now. I'm going to call it the Whirl line, and it's these really fun die cuts, and they come in leaves and florals and birds, butterflies. And I just really love this where it's got like the inner layers and all the lines. It adds a really fun detail to it. So now we're going to go ahead and use these leaves to try to determine where we're going to put them. I wanted the flowers to be on top of each other. I didn't want the leaves to overlap any of the florals. So here I am just fidgeting, my favorite thing to do, and just trying to figure out where are we going to put these leaves? How do I want them displayed? A lot of my card making is this fiddling and fidgeting that I'm doing in every single video that you see of mine. It is definitely just a process. This is that inner feng shui I talk about, where I just go until something inside of me says, yes, that's it. Let's glue it here. So now I'm just finalizing exactly where the leaves are going to go, and then we're going to go ahead and use some more of that Kraft Tacky glue to adhere them down. Now this silver glitter cardstock is Simon Says stamp, and I absolutely love their glitter cardstock because it does not shed when you rough it up or when you die cut it. We all know glitter is troublesome sometimes when it is in your craft room because it gets everywhere. But this cardstock is really great because it doesn't shed or flake off after die cutting. So now we're just doing the final gluing, just making sure that there's a lot of glue underneath these die cuts because I want to ensure that this can be mailed. And in order to do that, we got to make sure that it stays all together. We don't want it falling apart so that when it's received, it is no longer looking like the card that you sent originally. So lots of glue, a little bit of touch up there. I got some green on one of the florals, so I used my sand eraser to kind of pick that off. And then we're going to go ahead and glue down the sentiment. I'm keeping a very thin line on the back of the sentiment because if it squeaks out onto the vellum part, where you're going to see that from the front. So just trying to be mindful to keep it where the black is and so that it doesn't muck up the vellum on the other side. So again, we're bringing in the stamp blocks. This is the number one use for stamp blocks in my craft room is just making sure die cuts are getting pressure and being put into place as they dry. So we're going to be using these layered parts of the leaves. So this die set's really cool. You could cut it out of two different colors and use these layered portions to adhere to the leaves themselves. So it kind of gives a different look, or it allows for you to do two different colors on the leaves after die cutting them. But I went ahead and used them because it is all one plate. I used them as additional leaves, knowing that I'm going to be cutting off anything that is on the outside of this panel. And then I thought I was done, but as I was putting the jewels away, I decided that we needed a little bit more. So this is me making a mess and then also adding some more jewels all around the outside to just carry on that circled shape that I was really loving with inside of the florals and just including it all around the card to make it feel a little bit more balanced for my liking. So this is me just fiddling, making sure that all of the little pearls that I'm adding look good to me and feel right. I try to follow the rule of three, and then I also try to follow the odd pearls that tends to be more pleasing to the eye, but sometimes that doesn't always work. And I just end up going with whatever looks and feels right to me. So we're going to go ahead and get these glued down, and that's going to be the card for today after I cut off all of the leaves that are hanging over the panel. Be sure to check the description box below for all of the items I used to create this card. Please note that they are affiliate links, and what that means is if you click on a link and shop with me, I do receive a small commission at no cost to you. I hope you enjoyed this card today, and I just want to let you know to take care.